Three people walk into a bedroom, two of them married, the third a stranger they've invited to stay. They've been drinking, laughing, playing with the occult as a joke, asking questions no one truly wants answered. And then something breaks, something small but fatal. A decision, a step, a reach for the living room mantel. 20 wounds later, one life is over, another is ruined, and the person who remains must watch the blood of her ex-husband pool on the bedroom floor. We're stepping into one of the most unsettling threesome gone wrong murders you will ever hear about, the killing of 25-year-old Anthony Brines, and the young man who stabbed him 20 times, Edward Martinez. We'll chart how a marriage faltered, how a dating app accelerated everything, and how a night that started with a Ouija board ended with a confession that a jury said proved premeditation. Stay with me to the end. What the appellate court reveals about that confession is chilling. Welcome to Dark Matters TV, where we don't just recount crimes, we remember lives. Tonight, we step into the story of Anthony Brines, a young man, a brother, a son, a husband who tried to open his heart even when it cost him everything. His life was cut short in the most unimaginable way. Not by a stranger lurking in the shadows, but by someone who shared his home, his space, and his trust. Here, we move carefully, layer by layer, through the choices, the betrayal, and the heartbreak that left a family forever broken and a community searching for answers. Because behind every headline is a name, behind every trial is a family, and behind every crime is a life that mattered deeply. If you're searching for more than just the facts, if you believe that remembering Anthony's name keeps his light alive, and that telling his story gives meaning to his loss, then you are exactly where you need to be. We tell these stories with reverence, with empathy, and with a promise that Anthony's life, and lives like his, will never fade into silence. If you're here with me, take a moment to hit that subscribe button, share this memory, and leave a word in the comments below. Your small act helps us keep stories like Anthony's alive, and it gives us strength to keep telling the ones that still need to be heard. It begins with distance. Haley Davis and Anthony Brines are married but strained. After an argument, she leaves Spokane and goes to the Tri-Cities to be with family. In that gap, like so many modern stories, an app appears. Haley downloads a dating app, meets Edward Martinez, a 19-year-old from Sacramento. Within weeks, she drives to California to live with him. Then, almost as quickly, they come back to Spokane, to the very house she still shares with her husband. They're broke, they need a place to stay, and Anthony, who still loves his wife, opens the door. For nearly 3 months, they try to make it work, a fragile triangle in a single home. Anthony knows about the relationship. He still welcomes them. Edward knows Anthony and Haley are not divorced. By many accounts, there's a tentative friendliness, a bizarre domestic détente built on the idea that it's temporary, that it's fine, that everyone is adult enough to navigate this. But none of them are fine. Behind the scenes, communications continue. The husband who wants his wife back, the wife trying to move forward, the new boyfriend trying to belong. Prosecutors would later say Anthony tried to help Edward, even befriend him, because he loved Haley. The defense would paint Edward as emotionally battered by a situation he didn't understand, fraying to the point of violence. Both versions agree on one thing. What happens next is catastrophic. If you're new here and want more in-depth, court source breakdowns, tap subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you meticulously researched cases like this. August 13th, 2020. The three of them have been drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana. They're in the master bedroom. Someone suggests the Ouija board, the kind of dare night nonsense people do when it's late and everything's already unstable. Then the atmosphere turns sexual. It was supposed to be adventurous. Instead, it becomes the last hour of Anthony Brines' life. According to trial evidence, Edward has trouble participating. He steps out, says he needs the bathroom, comes back, watches. Haley moves to encourage him, to bring him back in. She notices something is off. The exact phrase she used later was maniacal laughing. Edward leaves again. When he returns, he sits at the end of the bed and makes a suggestion. He arranges their positions so Anthony's back is turned to him. Seconds pass. Anthony says, "Ow, stop." Edward, "Stop, I have to go to the hospital." But it's too late. A blade is already moving. At first, Haley thinks Edward punched Anthony. Then she sees the knife and the angle of the blows. 5 stabbing wounds to Anthony's back. When Anthony turns to face his attacker, perhaps to defend himself, Edward pushes him to the floor and continues, plunging the blade into his chest and abdomen again and again. When the body finally stills, the count will be 20 separate stab wounds, 14 to the chest and abdomen, 5 to the back, 1 to the arm, piercing the lungs, liver, spleen, intestines. The medical reality is stark. This is overkill. This is decisive. This is not an accident. In a move that speaks to raw survival, Haley dials 911 and slides the phone under the bed so Edward can't disconnect the call. He lifts her by the wrists and throws her onto the bed. He tells her to pack. They're going to California. And then he says words the jury will never forget. "You never loved me, did you? And I killed him." When she refuses to go, he gathers his things, gets dressed, and walks out into the night. He does not render aid. He does not call 911. Police find him nearby, in an alley. He cooperates. He admits to the killing. And yet, that's not the end, because one statement he gives police will later become the center of a legal fight about premeditation. After his arrest, Edward is brought to the station. He's Mirandized. According to findings later cited by the Washington Court of Appeals, he invokes his right to an attorney at 8:35 a.m. The detective tells him he'll be booked for first-degree murder. Edward asks he's dead. The detective confirms, "You killed him," and tells Edward that if he wants to talk later, he can send a kite, a jail message. As the detective gathers his things to leave, Edward speaks up. He wants to talk and doesn't need a lawyer. He's re-Mirandized at 8:38 a.m. He waves. He begins to talk. The court will later find this was a voluntary waiver. In that statement, Edward describes feeling a deep anger, building as the threesome unfolded, especially, he says, when Anthony touched him. He says he left the bedroom and, at a certain moment, his premeditation started. He decides to get a knife from the living room mantel, the only weapons in the house, returns to the bedroom, positions the couple so Anthony's back is turned, and stabs. He admits pushing Anthony off the bed and finishing the job. These aren't words someone says when they're claiming a split-second reflex. They are the language of a decision. In September 2020, the state charges Edward Martinez with premeditated first-degree murder. The defense will argue later that his confession should have been suppressed, that he'd invoked, and that what followed wasn't voluntary. But the trial court admits the statement, and a jury will hear Edward in his own words talk about when that premeditation began. April 2023. The trial plays out over the course of days. Prosecutors call it a case of choices, silly choices at first, deadly ones at the end. They say Edward left the room, procured a knife, rearranged the body so Anthony's back faced him, and then delivered 20 wounds, many to vital areas, ample circumstantial evidence of premeditation. They quote Edward's own words. The premeditation started right there in the room. The defense counters with a psychological portrait. A teenager in over his head, manipulated by a toxic marital dynamic, emotionally cornered. They say there were no wounds to the classic kill zones, like the heart or neck, suggesting intent to stop rather than to execute. They argue intoxication, stress, chaos. They bring up the Ouija board, the sense of something irrational overtaking the room, as if to say, whatever happened, it wasn't planned. But the numbers don't yield. 20 wounds. Back first, then front, then the floor, then his words. Finish the job. After deliberating, the jury convicts Edward Martinez of first-degree murder. It's not manslaughter. It's not an accident. It's premeditated homicide. At sentencing, the judge says what many are thinking. The fact you could stab somebody 20 times is really kind of beyond comprehension. He imposes a sentence of 27 years, 25 years plus a 2-year deadly weapon enhancement, with community custody to follow. Edward, now 22, tells the courtroom he takes full responsibility, that he hopes the family finds peace, that he can't explain what came over him. For Anthony's family, the day is both a verdict and a void. If you value careful sourcing and victim-centered storytelling, please subscribe. It helps bring depth, not sensationalism, to cases like this. Edward appeals. His key argument is the confession should not have been admitted because it wasn't truly voluntary after he asked for a lawyer. And even if it came in, the state didn't prove premeditation beyond a reasonable doubt. The Washington Court of Appeals, Division 3, affirms the conviction. The appellate opinion leans on the trial court's unchallenged findings. He invoked at 8:35. Detectives stopped questioning. He asked if Anthony was dead. The detective confirmed, said you killed him, and mentioned the kite. Then Edward reinitiated at 8:38, was re-Mirandized, waved, and talked. Under Washington law, that sequence, No further interrogation, no coercive tactics, a voluntary reinitiation and waiver satisfies the test. The confession stands. On premeditation, the court lists familiar hallmarks. Weapon procurement from another room, multiple wounds, striking from behind, method and manner of killing, admissions of intent. The panel cites Edward's own statement that the premeditation began in the bedroom, his leaving to get a knife, his rearranging of the couple, and the 20 stab wounds, including those to vital organs, as substantial evidence. Conviction affirmed. Courtrooms are about facts. Families are about people. At sentencing, Anthony's loved ones tried to explain who they lost. A brother whose shared birthday will never feel the same. An intelligent, kind man with an easy laugh. A stepdad who said the world was robbed of Anthony. And an aunt who reminded the court that Anthony took Edward in and showed him grace, only to be literally stabbed in the back. We often talk about the night of the crime as if it's the center of the story, but for families the center is a person, their habits, their humor, the way they moved through a room. When the court day ends, the verdict doesn't fill the chair at dinner. It doesn't answer the phone on birthdays. The grief is practical, relentless, and unbelievably quiet. This case resists easy labels. Was it jealousy? Shame? A crisis of identity? Rage? The defense wanted you to see a teenager detonating under pressure. The state wanted you to see a man who left a room, found a weapon, re-entered, and then arranged two bodies like chess pieces. And on paper, the law follows the second narrative. Premeditation is often a matter of moments, thought over beforehand, and in Washington, a weapon fetched from another room, wounds delivered from behind, and a statement about finishing the job leave little doubt. But law is only part of it. There's a deeper cautionary tale about triangulation, untended emotions, and the way human beings, under stress and intoxication, can escalate a fragile situation into a fatal one. It's not about kink-shaming or moralizing. Adults make adult choices. It's about recognizing danger when jealousy, intoxication, and unresolved love are sharing a bed. Edward Martinez, convicted at 22, serving 27 years. An appeal denied. A life with long, quiet hours to replay a 3-month experiment in coexistence that ended in 20 blades. Haley Davis, still alive, forced to carry a memory the mind can't set down. And Anthony Brines, a son, a brother, a husband, whose name must not be reduced to a headline about a threesome gone wrong. He was a person. He deserved a tomorrow. If you or someone you love is in a volatile situation, romantic, domestic, or otherwise, leave before it turns. There's no bravery in staying where knives are close at hand and feelings are running hot. Step out. Breathe air that isn't charged. Ask for help. If you found value in this careful, sourced narrative, subscribe to Dark Matters TV. It lets us keep telling these stories with the depth victims deserve and the restraint their families need. Rest in peace, Anthony Brines. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware.